You know what's so epic about that intro / outro
Hmm.
is that's like one of the same songs that we chant when we're on the pilgrimage in Oklahoma.
It is a march from taken from the Crusades itself. So
Yeah, we sing a lot of those Crusader chants. It's pretty epic. And so when you hear like 50 to 100 dudes in a monastery chanting that as you're walking in after trudging 35 miles, it's pretty epic.
Hold on.
Whatever, your sister like getting into that stuff. So it's just like, it's really bad. Like guys know how to navigate that a little bit better.
Yeah,
I'm not saying they're smarter, but they're like a little gruffer.
Plus, imagine the dangers of a woman listening to rock and roll and all that energy while she's driving.
That's probably, if you listen to the radio that goes on in a car that just flips over 5 times, like I guarantee like Iron Maiden is playing or something. Like it's just, I'm sorry, it's a fact.
You have no idea how cool I think it is that you were on censored.tv, dude. Like,
you're the star.
I know, but
look at you. That's you right there. It's perfect.
You got your logo and everything.
What's funny? Is that's totally an Anthony shirt right there.
100%. He's got my background. He made his face black, like I'm like legit black.
That guy, he's a meme master.
Dude, he is amazing, man. Holy cow. I have to retweet this. Oh,
I had to look. So it's all about him defending what he calls butt rock.
Butt rock?
Nickelback, Creed.
Ah.
I had to look stuff up so I wasn't completely lost.
Oh my gosh.
Joe in locals, Joe says, I cannot tell which one is which.
Whoa, what did I just hit? I hit something in locals. I published something that wasn't there. All right, so wait. Let me join the stream. I want to see the comment section. Okay. All right, what do we got? We got 45 people. All right. So what we'll do is we'll play the Peterson clips, and then maybe if we get like a good segment, maybe we'll put just like a small segment of it up on YouTube later or something, just to promote the locals.
Which one do we want to
All right, so I mean we could just go with the long one because I mean we have a couple of short ones. You can play. Let's start with one of the short ones. Let's see.
So I've heard that Jordan does somehow in some way blaspheme.
Not in any of the clips I recorded.
Okay, so I just wanted to make sure. So we
can not in any of the clips I recorded. Now, what's weird is Matt allowed him to at one point, and he let him drop F-bombs, and then at one point he does blaspheme, but they put blasphemy a label and beeped it out, and it's like you let him say it earlier.
They might have just not caught it.
Might have not caught it, but you could have just beeped it. You didn't need to write. But then again, it's like, well, you let him drop F-bombs earlier.
I'm more okay with F-bombs personally.
Me too.
Yeah.
So the people would have known what it was, but I think it was just, it was just strange.
Who knows with that editing world?
Just pick one. Just play one. Let's see where it goes.
Okay. Choose your own adventure here, everyone.
Oh, yeah, I think I know this clip.
Temptations of Christ in the desert.
Yeah, man. Okay. Absolutely.
So the first temptation is to ask God to turn the stones to bread. Okay. So what does that mean? To ask God for an unearned favor.
Okay.
That's a satanic temptation. It's like God is not your delivery man.
Okay.
You don't get things you don't deserve. He's not to be called on to grant your wishes. He's not a genie.
Okay.
Okay. Second temptation. Throw yourself off the highest place. Oh, I see. So you want God to rescue you from your stupidity?
Yes, please.
No.
Okay.
Not happening. Third temptation. Power. To turn to power. Like Moses does. Right? That's why he doesn't get into the promised land.
Right.
Well, those are major temptations. Okay, so that's not how to pray. You don't pray for power. You pray for favors.
Yeah.
And you don't pray to be delivered from the necessary consequences of your own stupidity.
I see. Okay.
What do you pray for? You pray that the pathway forward might reveal itself to you. That and in all humility.
Yeah.
That's the humility is I don't.
So I just thought
the glass darkly.
Yeah.
Please.
You want me to
I
keep
don't.
going?
I just thought that was interesting because so often we're tempted to see God as a genie when we're in trouble, right? And I never associated that with the temptations of Christ. Because, I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with when hard times hit, you begging God for help. But I do see something wrong with if you don't receive help in the way you wanted it to come, thinking God didn't answer your prayer.
Yeah. Because it's like the reality is that God answers all prayer. Just sometimes the answer is no. And that's what we don't like. I think it kind of goes back to like the modern world seems to have developed a completely different, including like a large swath of Catholics, a completely different understanding of God than like 50, 60 years ago or the medieval, certainly. So it's like back in the day, like if you would have asked your average medieval peasant, like, who is God? Maybe they didn't use these words, but this was the concept. They would have said, he's this infinite, all powerful, unchanging, first mover, right? First
That would have
cause.
been right from the Baltimore Catechism, basically.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's just like he is God. Like he's separate from us in the sense that, he doesn't have, and I'm not talking about the second person of Christ in his humanity, but like he doesn't have our nature, right? He's etc. Whereas today, I think we've seen a pendulum swing so much. You see this in evangelicalism all the time, but they've like made God into this kind of like buddy best friend, like this person you just hang out with and chat whenever you want, etc. And the reality, so like I grew up in that latter world, and I think that's kind of partially what Peterson is alluding to, and to a degree, is it's like, we often want to come to God like a genie and say, here's my desires, here's my want, you're the bellboy, go get me what I want, right? You're my best friend, you're my provider, give it to me. Why am I giving it? And then when you, I think, kind of grow up and have a little bit more spiritual maturity through the process of grace, you realize it's like, wow, I am a wretch and I need you, like not to give me a car, but like to give me life, just to like preserve me now,
Sometimes I think I'm a little spoiled because, I mean, of course, I, like everyone, will ask God for things, right? But
and that's not a problem.
Yeah, like everyone, I'll obviously ask, oh God, please help me with this, please help me with this. But there's only been, I think, 3 times in my life where I was desperate for God and for his help. And I'm talking in front of the crucifix in tears, begging God. And they weren't answered immediately, but they were answered. And just took a little time. And when I look at it in hindsight, it's like, whoa, God really answered that prayer, like deeply answered that prayer. And they were very, very big things. One of them was my marriage, saving my marriage. And well, the first one would have been my conversion, right? Asking God, if you exist, please reveal yourself to me, because I can't believe something I don't know is real. That was the first one. The second one was my marriage. And the third one is something very private, but it was another one of those outpouring of my hearts where it was like, I cried from the depth of my being and God answered it. So I almost feel like I'm spoiled.
That I came into Anthony's life.
Yeah. But I understand why people would doubt God's existence if their prayers weren't answered. I just feel like I'm kind of spoiled in that respect, where God did answer a few of my prayers.
I think that's totally fine. Like when you read every catechism, like we're supposed to, like in prayer, we're supposed to pray with humility, with consistency. So we keep asking God, right? And also with expectancy. Like, so we have to expect that he will answer it. We just don't know how he's going to answer. And then therefore, like we can pray for physical things, but that has to be secondary, right? Because ultimately we have to be praying for that which is going to help get us to heaven, right? So like when we pray like, hallowed be thy name, and we're asking for God's will to be done, right, on earth as it is in heaven. It's not that, like in the prosperity gospel world, that we'll get lots of money or cars or whatever, but that rather we would get, salvation. But there's no problem. Like if you're in need, like your father, hey, I need to provide for my kids, Lord, please help me to get a job, or please help me to get a pay raise, or like,
none of my prayers were material related.
Yeah. My point is just, you see people like swing back to forth. They're like, okay, unless I'm praying like this very like flowery, pious sounding prayer, I won't get answered. And then there's other people who are like, yeah, I mean, I've never prayed to be humble. I've just been praying God to like give me what I want,
Yeah. Yeah, and that whole Jesus is my buddy concept, right? Like,
Yeah, it's so weird.
All right, Rob, play the next clip. Let's try to get through these because I don't want to. We got one of them's like 4.5 minutes long and it's really interesting.
Okay, just any of the next ones?
Yeah, one of the shorter ones.
As Tammy has had this journey into Catholicism, I just assume there are things about what Catholicism teaches that you're like, nope, disagree. And then other
the
things,
whole communist part of it I could do without.
I'm not sure the church is teaching that.
Yeah, liberation theology.
Yeah, there might be people within the church.
There sure might
Base.
be. Like 60% of them.
Yeah, absolutely. There's corruption. The Catholic. I'm open to the
Call
Catholic
them
Church being the
out.
most corrupt institution on the planet.
No, I wouldn't go that far.
No?
Well, they've got some heavy
I'd
competition.
be open to that. I'd very much open to that. So sure, yeah, there are scoundrels in the church. I often say to people, if you ever leave the Catholic Church to join a pure communion, like a nice holy communion, once you join it, it won't be, because have you met you?
Well, right.
You know,
exactly.
so I'm going to stay here.
Yes,
I'm gonna
yes.
stay
No,
here.
that's exactly right. It's like, and even, of course, the church as an enterprise is corrupt because all human enterprises are corrupt.
Right.
And the most corrupt people will try to corrupt what's highest. So the church is peculiarly susceptible to the religious hypocrites, like the Pharisees.
Yeah.
Right. So that's eternally the case. Does that mean that you should abandon the enterprise? It's like, well, like you said, if you're Christ, then no problem. But if you're not,
maybe don't.
Well, yeah, you might think that you're a part of the problem.
So I guess
just that was
I have so many. I have two thoughts, but then I have a question for both of you too, because it's something you brought up, Anthony. So, one, good on him for just like calling out the plain and obvious. Every single person who just has access to the internet, right, and who's not biased and trying to explain things away, thinks that the Pope and the hierarchy are commies. My parents do. There's even a large percentage of the Novus Ordo crowd thinks that Pope Francis is a commie.
Oh, yeah.
Is the Catholic Church communist? No, it's condemned. In fact, you're actually automatically excommunicated under Pius XII for being a communist, etc. But he can clearly call it out. Liberation theology, it's clearly a cancer in the church. Thank you for calling it out. Two, I would say, and this kind of leads me to my question. So notice kind of, and this is not bashing Matt, but like notice his kind of defense, right? So like on the one hand, he wants to defend the church, which is good, but also he kind of has to tiptoe around the fact that the guy at the very top, right, says things that, Karl Marx would not have any issues with.
Yeah.
Right. And so that leads me to my question, which is what you brought up earlier, Anthony. Like, what do you think, if there even is any, like this turmoil or this conflict may be going on in Mr. Fradd?
I think you're going to get to it. I think that Matt, and it's not just this episode, and I don't want anybody to think I'm crapping on Matt here.
Yeah, no trash on Matt.
This is not at all that. I've seen it a few times with a few different guests that he interviews, especially when it's somebody in a position of a wealth of biblical knowledge or things like that. I think maybe when he had Scott Hahn on or a priest on, you can see it in the questions he's asking. He's trying to ask it, and he's posing it as if, well, maybe a Protestant or an atheist is listening to this, so I'll pose the question as if I'm them. But it sounds very much like he is struggling with his faith right now, and that I'm not saying he lost his faith. I'm saying it sounds like he's struggling with a lot right now, and I don't blame him. I mean, I'm speaking completely in an opinion here. I may be completely wrong. I just kind of get that feeling that he's really struggling right now, and I just think a lot of people are, man. I think a lot of people are having a very difficult time right now, and I think Francis is going to have to answer for that, man. Like that's
1,000%.
He's going to have to answer for the crisis of faith he has struck into the hearts of so many faithful.
1,000%. Like I was talking with a friend of mine this past Sunday after Mass. He's going to be going off to a seminary. He's just trying to figure out whether he's going to go to the Institute Seminary or the Society Seminary at the moment. Everyone pray for him. His name's Ethan. Really cool dude. And we were talking about this afterward, and he's kind of going back and forth. And he said that when we got to the discussion of, like, for instance, this segues into it, but like John Paul II kissing the Quran, right? We were both evangelicals, Ethan and I, right, coming into the church. And I was just like, man, as someone who loves the Eucharist and loves Mary and just loves the faith, like, how could you do that? Because, like, aside from the fact that that book is just so evil, like, it's just so filled with so much evil, like, literally satanic inspired book. Like, how could you love Christ and do that? Plus, the fact is it's like, you're the Pope, so that you're supposed to be the model. That's just so scandalous to people. But it leads me into this where it's like, okay, on the one hand, it's like, I get that too, Anthony. It's like Mr. Fradd, on the one hand, knows that the church isn't perfect in the sense of her members, right? The church herself is, of course, perfect, but like her members aren't. But then on the other end, he seems to kind of expect the Pope and the hierarchy to be that like perfect model, like in some form or fashion, or at least near
Which
that.
I don't think is an unreasonable expectation.
Yeah, it makes sense. It's like, like he should be that. But then it's also like, well, when you look at church history and you're like, okay, Peter was a knucklehead. A lot of the apostles did some pretty rough things. A lot of popes throughout history have done some terrible stuff. I'm wondering if he's just like, okay, am I placing too much of my faith in the Pope? As opposed to like Christ's promises? Because like when Christ promised that the gates of hell wouldn't prevail against the church, like, what does that mean though? Like, does that mean that it gets close, or that we're in this picture?
Well, yeah, that's what if he had to make the promise, that means it's going to look as if the gates of hell prevailed. And all we have is that promise. Like, it doesn't mean it will never come close to prevailing. It's the gates of hell will not prevail, but it's going to come pretty damn close to it. And you're going to, it's going to shatter the faith and shake the faith of even the elect, if that were possible, right?
Yeah.
As the scripture says, it will shake the faith of even the elect. And you have to really think about that scripture, because I always think about that in respect of, I don't want to be led astray into some movement. I just kind of want to just trust in Christ's promise and just know that the Catholic faith from all time is the Catholic faith that converted the pagans. Just trust in the faith that was handed down to the apostles, and you can't go wrong.
Yeah, and I agree. And actually, so you guys already know this. So I'm getting conditionally confirmed with the SSPX this next Friday on the 25th, or excuse me, it's next Saturday, 25th. But in process of that, for like the last 6 months, I've gone through and I've read 6 traditional catechisms, just kind of like really trying to take this as serious as I can. But one of the things I found interesting is all these catechisms mention how like the church has always gone through major crises, and they'll give examples like the Arian crisis, the Reformation, right, the Albigensian crisis, etc. But they give such good details. They're like, yeah, most of the time when you hit these massive crises, most of the Catholics apostatize, but that doesn't change the reality of like the truth is the truth.
Yeah.
And they say even sometimes, right, all the bishops of the world go haywire, like in the time of St. Athanasius. Like picture Athanasius is in Egypt. If you were a Catholic in Egypt during that time, and every single Catholic nation all of a sudden was Arian, that'd be pretty tempting to be black-pilled right there.
Yeah.
And so it's like, this is nothing new, but we do know that the church does teach that Satan hates the church and wants to destroy the church. We've got to remember that.
Yeah.
And therefore he's going to try every means he can.
Let's get to the big clip, Rob. Go to the long one. We might have to pause it a few times, and we'll see. But I remember the long one.
I want you just to not even like try to like chill with your voice. Just be Anthony. That'd be epic.
It comes out like if I have a beer or two.
Ooh, we know Anthony, have a beer or two before you jump.
Or 2 20-ounce glasses of bourbon cream followed by 4 cigars.
Or margaritas and hand them out in the backyard.
So just off topic here. When we were camping last, I tried to record one of the MRE videos with Maddie. And I had some coffee and I had a bottle of bourbon cream that I poured in there. In this video, it got screwed up, so it's never going to air. But I put the bourbon cream up to the camera. I told the story of Pennsylvania when I literally saw you pour a full 20-ounce, glass of just bourbon cream. And Todd from across the table goes, "Anthony, there's alcohol in that, right?" you used to go, "Uh-huh."
Those Catholics, man, they can put them away.
No, we had fun on that trip, man.
That was
we had a fun time. You know what? All right. So Rob, I'm trying to figure out, like, I want you to come in for the PA trip. So that's why I didn't tell you to do the Catholic Identity Conference, because I don't want you to get worried about coming to. But I'm trying to see if it's possible to do PA and then the Catholic Identity Conference. Maybe you'll come in for the Catholic Identity Conference and my uncle's house again. Like, let's do one again.
Are we doing that again?
I would like
October? Because that was the same weekend as the CIC.
As the CIC, right? So I'm trying to think if we could do it where, like, we'll take a few days off and we'll do like Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And
when is it? Because I'm going to Florida middle of October.
No, this is last week in the September, first week of October.
I won't have any
days
vacation days.
That's my problem. I'm out of vacation days. And I feel bad because Father Nick's really wants to go. I'd almost rather just push it off a year and do it next year.
Yeah,
but I gotta say, I feel
we
terrible.
may not even all be here next year.
Well, if Father Nick's really wants to go. That's the thing, and I got to figure this out.
Watch what happens if Biden gets reelected.
Well, yeah, we'll figure something out. Maybe we'll do something like that. But all right, so let's play the long clip.
The long one.
What happens?
I met a fella in Dublin recently. I was giving some talks there, and he came up to me, noticed me, spotted me in the street. Hi, if you're watching. And he wanted to believe in God, but he didn't want to believe in a fairy tale.
Yeah, well,
and that's fair enough. But so I had my answer, but if you could sum it up, and maybe you feel like I've already said it.
Okay, so we have Freud. It's like Freud. Religion is a defense against death anxiety. We have Marx. Religion is the opiate of the people, compared to Marxism, like the methamphetamine of the people. Right. Okay, so it's just a defense against death anxiety, is it? Why is there hell then? If it's a defense against death anxiety. Why bother with hell? Well, it's a convenient place to put your enemies. That's a very cynical answer.
Rob,
it's not historically warranted.
I don't want to forget
Why bother?
In the E. Michael Jones book, Logos Rising, he goes through the whole Marx quote about how religion is the opiate of the masses. And then he goes through how the whole world is on prescription meds. They're on Xanax, and they're on Zoloft, and they're on all this. And he goes, so apparently opiates are the religion of the masses. It's like the way he flipped it around, it was like, no, it's not religion as the opiates of the masses. It's opiates are the religion of the masses. And E. Michael Jones just flipped that around so good. But you can go back to it. Yeah, because this is the clip where I pick up on some things with Matt. So he starts off talking about the guy in Dublin who didn't want to believe in a fairy tale.
Bother with the notion that there's a moral order at all. If you're going to invent a fairy tale, why have one that's got some teeth in it to make it more believable? It's like, really? Come on. This is some cosmic conspiracy so that people are smart enough to invent hell just to justify their defense against death anxiety. That's your theory. That's a stupid theory. Right. And then, well, it's a fairy tale for children. It's really the crucifixion. That's a fairy tale for children, is it? Especially when that's what you're called upon to bear.
What about a fairy tale for adults? You know, as the new atheists used to say, Santa Claus for adults.
Oh, yeah. Sure. There's nothing different between the story of Santa Claus and the story of Christ. They're obviously the same thing. Right? There isn't a worse demand that can possibly be made of people than the Christian demand. It's exactly the opposite of a fairy tale. It's exactly the opposite. It is the most brutal possible reality. It's not just death, it's hell. And you think, well, there's no such thing as hell. It's like, have it your way, buddy. If you have studied history and you think there's no such thing as hell, you are an idiot.
All right. Well, what about this question? Because I know you said you don't like being asked, do you believe in God? Yeah. Fair enough.
I have an answer to that. I act as if God exists. That's the answer to that. Right. Because the belief, it's like, what are you talking about?
It means this. I think, and even just a low bar, there's a creator and sustainer of the universe. That's it. Yes, I think that's probably true. Why is that so silly? Especially if one is just sort of growing in the faith and hasn't really...
It's just not the right...
Why can't it just be really superficial? Why can't it be that... Why can't it just be superficial with a lot of maturation that has to take place?
Well,
for someone to begin by going, all right.
Look, man, there's lots of pathways forward. And all the biblical heroes stumble at the beginning. You know, Jacob is a liar and a cheat. Abraham's a mama's boy.
Rahab's the prostitute.
Yeah, I mean,
Peter.
Yeah, Moses is power mad and impulsive.
He started out as a murderer.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So, people start out flawed and things can beckon in half-formed shape that still bear promise.
Yeah. Well, then here's the question. Do you think there is life after death? Even if you have no kind of a way of knowing that infallibly, do you act as if there is? Do you think there is?
Your actions echo in eternity.
What does that mean?
It's best I got, man.
What are we at on time, Rob?
All right, so
let's pause it real quick there. Okay, there's a couple of things.
Yeah, I have so many thoughts.
Man, I forgot the
interesting conversation.
Oh man, what was the first one I wanted to get? All right, so even actions echo into eternity.
Well, so he said he acts as if there is a God.
No, it was before that.
So he started off talking about hell and about like the reality that. So he was actually saying, especially in the beginning, some very Catholic things in fundamental theology. But
okay,
did you get it, Anthony? Yeah,
it was. Okay, so there's no harder moral demand than the Christian story, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So there was this thing that happened to me years ago where it was
puberty.
When somebody was saying to me, Christian, like it was like the new atheist talking point where it's like Christians just want to believe in their sky daddy, and they just want to feel comfortable about death, like they're afraid to die, and it's like something clicked in me where I was just like, wait a minute, is it me who's afraid to die so I invented God? Is it me who's pretending there's a God because I'm afraid to die, or is it you who's pretending there's no God because you're afraid to be judged, right? Because you're going to be held to account for the life you live. Right. So when he answers our actions echo into eternity, a lot of people don't like that answer because he's not giving the we believe in the resurrection of the body and we're going to have a new heaven and a new earth. Right. But there is something about what he's saying where even when my understanding of hell kind of really started to make sense to me, when it was, okay, so whatever you chase in this life that isn't God is what you'll chase for eternity. So if you have the spirit of lust that you're chasing in this life and you put that before God, for all of eternity, you are going to be chasing the God of lust.
That not to mention the fact that the demons will be essentially assaulting you in that way in hell.
It will be an eternity of it, right? So you whatever God you chose over the real God is the God you will serve in eternity. Now that Jordan may not be putting that in terms of the resurrection of the body, but he's right about that. Like whatever you do in this life will echo into eternity. Now Jordan's not
for the record. That's literally just a quote from Gladiator.
Right, but there's truth to it.
Or how do we know Jordan Peterson wasn't the first one to do it?
Yeah, it is a direct quote from Gladiator. I watched it recently. But
very Italian movie.
No, does that originate in maybe Marcus Aurelius though? I don't know, but
I would agree with you, Anthony, because I think it's true. Like the three things I took from that clip were, one, like in the beginning when he's talking about like what would essentially be the purpose of inventing this fairy tale where you have this like eternal conscious torment at the end of it. It can't be just like a scare tactic to get people.
The government wants to control the people. It's so ridiculous. This is what overthrew the government.
Exactly.
This whole story is what overthrew the empire.
Yeah, and it doesn't make any sense to be like, oh well, don't do bad because then you'll end up here, because at the end of the day, like, people are going to do it regardless, and so just to try to scaring them, that's not really a convincing answer. So like why would this be there, especially when you start to dig down into it? But I think his answer is actually very profound. Like, our actions do echo into eternity, both in the context of like heaven and hell, our merits, demerits, but also in the context of just how we treat one another. So it's just like, think about it. Like, we all know about like a moment in our life, whether it was a parent, friend, or somebody who said something to us, did something to us that affects us still today, right? Maybe it was when you were a kid, maybe it was 5 minutes ago, who knows? But it affects you today, and you kind of carry with you, like your soul has shrapnel almost in it, right? And life in so many ways is allowing God to come down, and pull out the shrapnel from your heart and pull out, from your soul to get healed. And it leads me to my third thought on him, which was he clearly sees that there is something greater than him. Like you see the passion, the way he speaks with. He's not like this robot. He's speaking with passion. So he clearly believes in something. But
he doesn't just believe in something. He believes in Christianity.
Yeah, and I think where his stumbling is it's like, so faith, according to the Catholic Church, is, again, it's one of the 3 theological virtues. It's in the intellect, and it basically just gives you the ability to assent to the propositions of the faith because God's the one who revealed them. But what he's wanting a faith that works by charity, because he's saying, like, just the idea of assenting by itself is so,
I think he's fighting against faith alone. I think he sees superficial Protestantism going about this. Oh, I believe in Jesus, and I've played the clip. I just posted the short on our channel before we came on of him talking about insipid Protestantism, right? Where he's like, these people who say, well, I believe in Jesus and I'm saved. Like, you are missing it. If that's what you think, you are missing it completely, because it really is about divinization and becoming more like Christ and embodying the Christian story in your own life and aiming for that thing that is so high that it's unattainable pretty much, but it's a constant reorienting your life towards trying to get to that high point.
Yeah, 110% agree. And that's why I think, like, he sees the fact that Protestantism is failing, right? That it just doesn't work. So he's not preaching that. But then he also, like, he sees his wife converts, right? He sees her go through all this suffering. She's praying the rosary. So she's like, wow, she has this faith that's pushing through this physical suffering. That's powerful. That's a testimony. But I think his stumbling block is, it's like, okay, I see my wife doing this. I see other people doing this. But then why is, like, say, in the beginning of the clip, like, the Pope essentially a communist?
Yeah.
And he talked about that with EWTN before, where it's like, why did you guys give up, pick up your cross and follow me, and replace it with, if we play,
he sees major issues in the Catholic Church. Yeah,
exactly.
Well, okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, that's what I think people got to realize. It's like, it's the same for my parents.
Such a scandal.
It is. It's a stumbling block to converts, and by the grace of God, people like Candace Owens and stuff are still coming in. But it is a scandal to people. So if you want to be ecumenical and be seeker sensitive to Protestants, etc., best thing to do, get rid of the ambiguity, get rid of this nonsense.
Just acknowledge it.
Salvation outside.
Yeah, just acknowledge it. That's 100%. I mean, listen, this is part of the reason I hide this stuff from my family, because I don't want them even seeing the scandal. But something I want to touch on with him, even talking about actions echo into eternity. Dude, the heaven is not something so clear in Catholic teaching, even, right? So, like, we know there's a new heaven and a new earth. We know there's a resurrection of the body. But there's some weird stuff going on with the resurrection, right? Like, sometimes they don't recognize him. Like, they didn't recognize him on the road to Emmaus until the breaking of the bread. When Mary Magdalene sees him, she thinks he's an angel, or she doesn't really know. She just thinks he's the gardener. Right? There's weird things going on there, right? When we were in Pennsylvania last year, we even talked about, will our resurrected body, like, will we eat with our resurrected bodies? And this it was so we were drinking a little bit, but so I'm like, well, I think yes, in respect of, we're going to the wedding supper of the Lamb, so we will eat the lamb. Now, this might be some kind of a spiritual eating. I don't know, but, like, I don't think our bodies will be pooping. You know what I mean? Like, our resurrected bodies won't, like, you won't have bowel movements in your resurrected body.
Yeah.
But I do think there will be some way that
would that be a holy crap? I had to.
So this was a conversation. So, like, half of us, I think it was like me, Eddie, and Rob. I don't remember what side you fell on.
Usually whatever one you're not on.
Yeah, so I think it was me, Eddie, and Enoch said we were going to eat, and you and Father Nix were like, "Nah, we're not going to eat." Whatever it was, but it was just an interesting discussion. Like he's not. I think when he reads the biblical narrative, he's seeing it like, look, it's not so clear that you just get a resurrected body and you become perfect, and that's it. He's looking at the actual text and he's saying, okay, well, look, it's a little ambiguous about what's going on here. Like they break bread on the road to Emmaus, and then Jesus disappears from their sight.
Yeah.
Like what is this? Is the resurrected body only the Eucharist there? Like there is some ambiguity in the text where if you're not Catholic, I can understand him going, all right, well, we don't exactly know what's going on here.
Part of it, I think, is it's just like a grace that God chose to give, because notice how like when he appeared to them in the room, they knew who he was.
Mm-hmm.
But then like when he's on the road,
Thomas touches him.
Exactly. So it's like,
and he eats fish with them at the shore with Peter.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I don't think in heaven we'll need food, because it's just like you see our Lord say that when people are in heaven, they shall be like the angels, neither giving in marriage or being married, etc. So it's like our physical functions of just surviving as the rational animal, I don't think will exist. But I do think that Peterson's on to something when he looks and says, okay, you see, they have this resurrected, if you will, this resurrected body. There's more to something here. And this is why it actually perfectly ties in with what happened 2 weeks ago with James White and the Jimmy Akin debate. There's that clip that's going around online that's really good, where Jimmy Akin basically presses him on purgatory. Have you guys seen this clip?
I think so.
Really good clip. He basically just asked James, he says, are we experientially, so like right now in this moment, righteous and right, like perfectly righteous? And the answer is no. And keyword is experientially. Okay. Will we be experientially righteous in heaven? Yes. Okay, Jim. What happens in between, right? And he couldn't give him an answer. It was really kind of hopscotching around the place. And that's what I think Peterson desires. He wants a faith that is totally transformational, that not only gives a good answer to the suffering, but also helps transform the suffering into your life, especially if he's a clinical psychologist. He wants to see the people who are suffering not just say, okay, I believe, good to go, I'm still suffering, but actually be transformed. And I think that that's the thing for him, is he's recognizing that it's going to be something which is totally transformational in a process. And I don't know, again, fully if he's accepted all that. It sounds like he's beginning to, because he recognizes all these characters in the scripture.
Well, he's talking completely different now than he was in 2016.
Yeah, a lot.
You could see he was talking like very early on in 2016. He was like he was just talking enlightenment stuff, and he's definitely developed a deeper, and I don't know if that's through what are we laughing at?
On locals, Thunder Gom says, well, of course, all the Mediterranean said that they'll eat in heaven. Your cousin,
me, Eddie, and
Enoch.
Let's break this down. Jesus eats fish with them on the shore.
No. Come on, no,
right?
We're done with it. We were done with this conversation in October.
No, Nick, will we eat in heaven?
I personally don't think we will, just because, again, so while Christ was on earth, even in that context, he's conforming to our nature. So Christ does have a physical body in heaven, but the reality is it's like, what is the purpose of eating? What is the purpose of human sexuality? It's ultimately to survive, which both of them are essentially not needed.
Okay, but so food existed before the fall.
Yes, but it still was there for their own like natural benefit, because while death wasn't a consequence and sickness wasn't a consequence, it was there, if you will, for enjoyment, but also still for physical vigor. And that's why, interestingly, kids will often ask the question, like, would Adam and Eve lived eternally on earth? And all the catechisms say they were withheld from death, and earth was basically like a testing ground. And God was then eventually, if they passed the test, be brought up into heaven. And so it's just like, what would be the need for food? I don't know.
Well,
maybe
there would be no
I don't
need
see the
for
need.
it. That's why I said there will be no bowel movements. You won't need it for sustenance. But I think that there's a possibility there will be eating, because heaven is described as a wedding feast. It is the wedding supper of the Lamb.
It doesn't necessarily mean it's literal.
No, but I think there will be some form of spiritual eating. Like, I don't know. Like I think of the Eucharist.
I was going to say, if anything, would it be the Eucharist in heaven?
That's what I mean.
We know there's a heavenly liturgy.
heavenly liturgy where the angels and saints are around the altar and they're worshiping the Lamb. Now we receive the Eucharist on earth. Are the angels and saints receiving the Eucharist in heaven?
I think that they're like, you definitely receive something in heaven, because you do see in like the very end of the book of the Apocalypse, it talks about how there's the tree of life, which people will eat from, and, you know, for all eternity. But I think that the reality is it's that like, that's metaphorical language. Saying that, like,
Nick, you eat like a bird. You don't know anything about
This must be someone that knows.
you like a
Nick.
bird? Yeah.
No, all right. So wait, even think of the biblical text after John 6.
Anthony's heaven. Food? Yes. Pooping? No.
Okay, so John 6, but okay, so after the feeding of the 5,000, they go across, and Jesus is there talking to everybody, and he says, you didn't come because whatever. He says, you came because I gave you the bread, and they're like, give us this bread. And he says, do not seek the bread. Oh man, pull up John 6. What the heck?
Yeah, do not seek the bread which will not fulfill the body, right? But seek the bread that will last for everlasting life.
Right. So it's now that, but he's also saying which is like every word, like the food we will eat is like every word from God, and it has something, you know, it's a very Protestant thing I'm saying here, but Protestant sounding thing, but there's something spiritual food. There will be some kind of spiritual nourishment in the form of eating, I think, in heaven. Maybe that's a way to say it. I don't know if I'm sounding crazy.
I don't know. I remember
usually
Aquinas
sound crazy.
does answer this question, but it's just been a while since I perused that area, so I need to go back and
You
look
don't
up.
have the Summa memorized? What's wrong with you?
I
You
don't.
better take Thomas out of your name.
I think there will be a form of eating, but it will be spiritual nourishment, not physical nourishment. That's
not even Walmart. Not even Walmart Thomas. You're like a Dollar General Thomas.
Bro,
Yeah,
don't even
man.
get me started with that Walmart Thomas and nuts. I'm so done with that group food. I actually have I was seriously debating, and I still might do this. Do you guys remember that video where it was Tim Gordon? He went over like the 200 like basically scandals of Pope Francis. He made this like 2 years ago or something like that. It's like a massive 2-part. I thought about just emailing and be like, yo, send me this list. I'll add all the new recent stuff, and then I'm gonna make a video called Why Pope Francis is Based, and then I'm just gonna pretend to act like all of these actions are based and be like, yeah, this is why. And then the very last reason, I'm gonna be like, Pope Francis is based for all of these reasons, plus what Twitter Thomists say. Thanks, y'all. Thanks for subscribing. See you later.
Oh man.
Nice.
Should we play the rest of that clip? We got like 3 minutes left.
Oh yeah, we better.
I think Christians love you in many respects, because in many ways you teach us better than our priests often do, and priests will be the first to admit that. They've learned so much from you, and we're grateful for it. I think some Christians are frustrated with you because they'll say,
that's okay. I'm frustrated by many Christians.
Oh, me too. I'm frustrated with myself daily. But they might say, look, you're using our book, a book that was written by believers and for believers, and all we're trying to figure out is, are you a believer? And it feels like when the question is put to you directly, it's obfuscated somehow.
It's not the right question. So like, there's no way, you know,
it is interesting.
What color is a musical tone?
Yeah.
Well, sorry.
Okay.
The framework from within which that question emerges is invalid. It's not the right conceptualization. Belief is a commitment. Mm-hmm. It's an existential commitment. It's not a statement of fact.
But in order to commit myself to something, I have to know it might exist in reality and not just in my imaginings.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So can't that just
where's
be the
the
first
reality?
step?
Well, this is partly why this book I'm writing right now deals with characterizations of God. So let me continue with that.
Oh, this isn't the clip. All right, Rob, play the last one we didn't play. It's only a minute.
Boy.
We got it. We got to get it in.
Okay, hold on.
This is where Anthony crashes through the door of the interview.
You got to get it in because it's the part where Matt really sounds doubtful.
Oh, come on, where is it? Okay, I got it.
Around you as if they don't have it.
Yeah, right. Try that for a week. See how popular you are with everyone. Right? How do people want to be treated? As if they're the embodiment of a logos.
Do you think, right, that the reason a lot of Catholics want you to become Catholic is in part because they are people of goodwill and they love you and they want your salvation. But do you think it's also because they want the big kid on campus to be on their side so they can feel more secure in a faith that they're not even sure they fully accept? Do you ever feel kind of used, like these different groups just kind of want you on their team?
Like I caught something there.
Well, there's
looking up at this,
faith that they don't even fully believe. They just want to hear you join the team because it confirms them in something they're not even sure they fully believe in. Like I hear him. He did the same thing in the interview with Gabby when he was talking about, like, he was getting on with Gabby after hours. He was like there was some things in that interview too where I caught this same kind of attitude where it sounds like Matt is really struggling with some things right now.
Yeah, the way he was looking up at the ceiling like this, and he was almost like, it was almost a venting question, like, so that we can be confirmed in our beliefs, like kind of like that to a degree.
It's either that or he has someone in mind and is trying to like cater that to that person, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's obviously, it's a show where people that don't typically watch will watch. It's Jordan Peterson, right? Yeah. So that's a hard interview to get, man. And Jordan didn't know him from a hole in the wall when he went in there, and he goes in, and you're talking to Jordan Peterson, man. Like, I don't care how freaking many famous people you think you've talked to. That dude's a force,
I just want to know, does he only have one of those jackets, or does he have, because he's in that jacket in every interview?
Well, he wears it when he's speaking to religious people, right? So, but there was at one point, Matt was just like, oh man, I forgot what I was going to say. And he just, like, the interview just started like falling apart. I just saw Matt's brain turn, and I'm like, I've been there. I've been in interviews where you're like,
we got 30 seconds.
Yeah, why'd you even say that? I was just going to pretend we were going to, you blew the bet. I was just going to make it like I was starting something exciting up. But all right, we can wrap it up. All right. We're